I'm Heidi Otway, your host for this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. In this conversation, we're talking about medical marijuana edibles and concentrates, which are legal in the state of Florida. So let's talk and learn about this subject with our guests. Our first guest is Jackie Cohen Roth, the founder and CEO of Cannabis MD and TPAD. Jackie is passionate about filling the void of cannabis science and policy education. Jackie, welcome to the forum. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, and I'm very excited to be part of this program. I think Mary and what FAMU is doing is fantastic. So, as you said, I am very passionate about filling the void of cannabis science and policy education, achieving that through social enterprise Cannabis MD. I'm very excited to share. The way that we're achieving that, we just got notice of a grant through the Maryland Department of Labor, where we are training folks who've had all sorts of boundaries to enter the cannabis industry. So it's really unique to have a grant through the Department of Labor, and then educating healthcare providers and C-suites within the industry, folks that are interested in coming into the industry. And then nonprofit TPAD is particularly focused on advancing women and people of color in cannabis STEM. And we're actively raising funds for the TPAD fellowship group. And I have a very unique degree, member of the first cohort from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy with a Master's of Science, Medical Cannabis Science, and Therapeutics, where I'm very proud to be a member of the faculty now with a focus on cannabis law and policy.
That's great. Thank you so much. Our next guest is Dr. Uma Dhanavalan, a highly respected physician and internationally recognized educator and subject matter expert on cannabis as a plant medicine. She is the founder of an independent medical practice, has received numerous honors, and is a diplomat of the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine. Dr. Uma, welcome to the forum. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And I'm really honored to be here with my guests and be a part of this educational panel here. I am a family doctor by training. I'm also a occupation environmental medicine physician specialized in heavy metals. I went to the Honorable School of Harvard School of Public Health and also MUSC. And I did my core training in New Jersey at the Medical University of Medicine and Dentistry. I did research there as well. From tissue culture to human research and animal research. And I'm very proud that I've been involved with cannabinoid medicine for now about 14 years, and I speak about it locally and globally. And my mission is to change the stigma regarding cannabis and for everybody to know about the endocannabinoid system. And I do it through education because even with all my degrees, I never learned about it, and it's still not taught in all of our medical schools and to our healthcare providers. And yet we call this, what we should be calling it, is medical cannabis. And the medical community has to also be educated because there's a lag between patients and doctors. So I'm very happy to be here. And the three words we use are educate, embrace, and empower. And whatever we learn today, reach one, teach 10. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Uma. And rounding out our panel is Dominique Gibson, also known as Chef Dom. She is based in Jacksonville, Florida, and known for her tasty creations that are infused with legal medical cannabis. She's an award-winning chef who creates cannabis dishes and educates people about their rights when using medicinal marijuana. Chef Dom, welcome to the forum. Tell us about your culinary skills and what's your specialty?
Well, thank you guys for having me on the show today. I'm very excited and honored to be on the panel with Dr. Uma and Miss Jackie this afternoon. Um, Basically, I kind of got thrusted into medical cannabis during like the pandemic, just seeing so many people around me being affected by the opioid crisis and just trying to figure out a way that I could help people educate themselves on different ways that they could um, alleviate and relieve some of the problems that they may be going through. And so I'm a baker at heart, more so. So I created a lot of different specialty cookies and different things like that. And then I was kind of thrusted into creating a lot of different unique brunch items as well, that were created with legal medical cannabis. And I was a part of a lot of events where we were partnered up with different people in Florida to try to help educate people on the laws and how to protect themselves and how they could obtain their own medical card in Florida and how they could legally medicate themselves and the laws surrounding that, as well as people that were maybe interested in obtaining like a hemp and CBD license in Florida so they can manufacture themselves as well.
Mhm. Thank you, Chef. To everyone joining us on this live program, please share, post, and tag a friend on Facebook to have them join this conversation. If you're on YouTube, share the link so others can join us as well. During the forum, we want you to send us your questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best to have the guests answer them. We also want you to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comments on YouTube and Facebook after the live program. Your name will be entered into a drawing on October 12th, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. Now let's start this conversation on cannabis. I am so excited about the dialogue we're about to have. But first, I want each of you to tell me what prompted your interest in medical cannabis and led to the work you're doing now. And I'm going to start with Dr. Uma. Tell us your story.
It's really interesting. I call it taking your pain and creating a purpose and becoming passionate about it. I still get very emotional. I got involved in this because my mom was dying of an illness known as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, which means we don't know what caused your lung disease. She had never smoked. She had never worked in an occupation that should have exposed her, and she had a deadly illness. And meanwhile, I was working at the world's largest cleanup site for plutonium, working as a medical doctor with my background in heavy metals. And I'm also a medical review officer, so I do drug testing. So here I am at the federal site doing my work as a family doctor, all of these things. My mother's dying. She watches a program and says they're using ganja. And I knew what that word was.
Yeah.
I beelined it into the bedroom, and she was watching a TV program about how cannabis was being used in Israel for COPD, asthma, lung cancer, and PTSD. Did not compute. Did not compute. What do you mean you're going to smoke weed and you're going to feel better and it's going to help you breathe? Was my curiosity, and I've always been a curious cat. And I started to learn and learn and learn, and I kept my mouth shut and shut and shut. And this is what really creates the fury in me, because here was knowledge that I couldn't talk about because it's federally illegal. So my mom passed away in January of 2012, and I never got to use it for her. And after that, I decided this was something I suffered with my own PTS, and I call it post-traumatic strength. And that's what I want people to understand. Drop the D. Everybody needs stress in your life to motivate us to do what we're doing. So really to get it. So that's what really got me started. And I started to write recommendations first in the state of Washington. I became a diplomat in cannabinoid medicine. And now I'm proud of what I do. And I speak locally and globally. And I call cannabis the exit drug, because we help people get off of opioids, like you mentioned, and also for death and dying. My youngest is 1 and my eldest is 98. So I truly get to practice family medicine. And I could proudly say I'm not part of the opioid epidemic problem. I'm part of the solution. And I haven't written an opioid in almost 20 years now.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Umar, for sharing your story. Jackie.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share my story. Like many of us advocates in the cannabis industry, I've been in the industry for decades, as I say. First experience as a teenager, when I was raising my 3 daughters, I kept mommy spices in the freezer, as I refer to it. And then I noticed how cannabis, my personal use at that time, it was not legal, but I did notice and recognize that the benefits, that how it treated, I have ADHD, I suffer from PTSD, and I had that personal experience. At the same time, I was raised during the 70s, was focused on becoming a physician. My father was one, my sister is one, and yet I was raised with that stigma: if you smoke weed, you're never going to get into medical school. through the years, similar to Dr. Uma's, is that I lost both my mother and my sister to cancer. And it just didn't compute to me of what they had said to me, but yet following the industry where my undergraduate degrees are in policy and economics. So, and I have that clinical mind as well, is it didn't make sense. Here's all this negative stigma associated with cannabis, but yet what it would have done to make the respective deaths of both my mother and my sister, for lack of a better word right now, more palatable, would have given me more time with them, or they would have been able to eat when they didn't want to eat. And so then I was in conventional healthcare, started a company, a magazine for physicians and healthcare stakeholders in 2004.
Mhm.
And watching what was happening in the East Coast in the West Coast, with California being the first state to legalize medical cannabis, and recognizing as there was this movement across the country that it was eventually going to be coming east, where I am based in Maryland. And I did not find at that time a platform that delivered credible education for the physicians and healthcare stakeholders to break down the stigma, to provide this really necessary education that's necessary. As Dr. Uma spoke to, is that only 9% of medical schools include cannabis science in their curriculum, and it's usually taught within an hour, focused on use disorder or addiction. So I launched Cannabis MD in 2017 to help fill that void by educating, building, and engaging an ecosystem to deliver optimal patient and product outcomes.
All right. Well, thank you, Jackie, for sharing your story. And Chef Dom, you touched a little bit about what prompted you to get into the cannabis space. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
My main mission now, I feel like, has changed a little bit, because I used to want to feed the people, and now I feel like I'm really stepping into more so where I need to educate the people, because I still find so many people that are still, they think they know, but they really don't know. They don't know how far cannabis can actually help you. So like, that's just the main thing. Just people who live here in Florida who are medical card holders. I think the next step for me is just being able to show them how they can medicate themselves and how they can use it in different things. So that's kind of where I'm stepping into it. But I did just kind of start just being in the food industry in the background, just being a baker and a chef, and just putting all these great things together, because my niche is just basically making things that taste really good, and people would not even know that it could actually help them at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's a great segue into my next question, is that edibles and concentrates have become a popular alternative for people who want to use medical cannabis, but they don't want to smoke it. So let's start with a basic question. What are edibles? Jackie, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So these are products that have been infused by the cannabinoids. Those are the molecules derived from the cannabis plant, like CBD. People are very familiar with THC. And edibles come in all forms, whether it's gummies, brownies, cookies. And they begin to be metabolized and break down in the body, first in the mouth through with the saliva meets the product, and then further into as part of the digestive system, where they're processed in the liver. And we're going to get into some of that, what the impact of that is later on. But again, these are consumable items that are infused with the cannabis products.
Okay, Dr. Uma, Dominic, did y'all want to add anything to that?
I mean, one of the most important things is that edibles, like just Jackie mentioned, they come in so many different forms. And just because it looked the same the last time does not mean it is the same. So that is, Chef Dom is sitting there shaking her head, and I'm sure she's going to chime in. And that's because my biggest message is that, as a physician, we say do no harm. But I want to take this one further and say safety first, do no harm. So, and some of these stuff, like Chef says, is they're yummy. And you don't want to just stop with one little morsel. You want to eat the whole daggone thing, and you don't know the effects of it. And before you know it, it's a really bad experience, and then people get averse to it. So what I want to always say, safety first, and understand that cannabis use is personalized. It's different every time. And we'll go into more details of how I recommend how patients use it. But I'd love to have Chef go right into this. About
All right,
this.
Chef Dom.
The main thing is that it's all, there are formulas and there are numbers that can be plugged in to create what they call doses, but all this is still an estimation, so you still have to be careful. So I like to say slow and steady is the way to go, even if you are an experienced user, just because edibles do have a different effect than if you are using cannabis in a different way, if you're smoking it, or if you're doing something in that kind of way. But you have to definitely be careful, because the candy might be good, but if you eat the whole bag of candy, then it might definitely give you bad effects, and it may sway you from using medical cannabis in the future. And really, it really honestly can help you so much. So it's just better to start slow and then see what's best for you.
Okay. And then I just want to follow up on what you all just said. We had some folks who sent us some questions before, and they were like, how do you know what's the safest type of edible? This was from Michael, who sent in a question. How do you know what's safe?
Yeah.
And this is where, I always tell people, just imagine yourself making a batch of cookies. Okay. You've made a batch of cookies. It doesn't mean that every cookie, even though it's identical shape and everything else, that it's got the same amount of cannabis products within each of them. Every cookie doesn't have a chocolate chip in it, maybe, and it's not the same number of chips in it. So this is why I tell people, just think about what you do at home and why it's not consistent. And this is the same principles that you have to use in it. So the safest way, as we keep hearing the words low and slow, and especially with edibles, there's drug-drug interaction. Please understand that your liver is where everything gets metabolized. And if this liver is compromised in any way, either with alcohol or other drugs or inflammation or hepatitis, or just combining other medications with the cannabis, can have a different effect every time. So I just want to give that as a standard warning label.
Okay. Did anyone else want to add to that?
Yes. Make sure that you are purchasing, that the product begins with a purchase from a regulated market. So that is, with Chef Dom, as she is using the products that she purchases that have been tested. We're going to get into that with that certificate of analysis, and that to ensure that you're using cannabis products that have been tested all along the way, which is the requirement from the grow to the process before they hit the consumer.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that certificate of analysis, because we do have a lot of questions like, what are the red flags that the edible you're eating could harm you? And I think folks don't realize that, in the regulated market, there is that certificate of analysis. And Chef Dom, you want to talk a little bit about that? What do people find when they get a product, an edible? What is that label?
So in the state of Florida, when you are shopping, they provide you with the website with links where you can actually click on the labeling and the certificate of analysis to actually look at all the different information, like the terpenes that are included in whatever you're buying in some products. Not in every single product, but a lot of times they have the terpenes. It has the THC percentage. It's going to tell you definitely what the strain is. If it's a hybrid, it's going to tell you if it's been exposed to heavy metals. It's going to tell you if it's been exposed to water, pesticides. It's going to give you pretty much all the information that you need to make an educated decision based on what you need as a patient, or just as a person, as an individual. It's going to give you everything that you need straightforward. And a lot of times you can go in and you could just look at a lot of different things. And when it comes to the edibles, they also have like the nutrition facts listed for people that may have allergies, or people that are gluten for, that have gluten allergies or different things like that. So it really is really easy for you to kind of cut through some of this if you just continue to educate yourself about what it is that you really need. So things that would be like a red flag for me, things that are expired, or if it's out of date, or if all the information is not there, if it's inconclusive, if you're buying from a regulated market per se.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and especially, I also I just wrote down a couple of notes, and it just, if there's a weird chemical smell or something that seems off, then that would also give me a red flag as a consumer. Even though you feel like you may be buying from a regulated market, you still have to use a little bit of common sense when you are consuming something that is being manufactured with different types of things.
Jackie.
Yeah, thank you for, there's, we have a terrific article on cannabismd.com that's in the chat. This is a really easy way to remember what a COA is, that certificate of analysis. It's the report card of the cannabis product. So as Chef Dom said and spoke to, is that there are things like if a product has a heavy metal, with somebody with a metal, with a metal allergy, that could be devastating to their health, patients, what other products or medicines that they're using. And again, pesticides, making sure that there aren't some harmful pesticides in there. And then also homogeneity. I might be mispronouncing that, but that's to ensure that you have even dosing. That when you have a 10 milligram gummy, that you're going to get the same cannabinoid profile, each one of those molecules in that same 10 milligram dose of that gummy each and every time.
Yeah. Dr. Uma, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and what I want to say is that there's not consistency yet. There's no standardization. This is where I'm going to explain to you. You can go to 3 different labs and take the same product and you'll get 3 different answers. Okay, so this is where we're not getting consistencies because we don't have, and so I just want people to understand that, we have the legal market, but there's still this other market that's there and people are growing at home. So what I want people to understand is no matter what you're doing, where you're getting your product, I call it SAW Solutions, and this is one of the lectures that we've created. And what SAW Solutions is about soil, air, and water. People need to understand where your cannabis is grown. What is it exposed to? Because we've talked about the main things that they're looking at is microbes, which mean, what is it? Mold, bacteria. Is it been checked for E. coli? What's in there? The pesticides, because there are legal pesticides growers are allowed to grow. So and there's some that are not allowed and they're still growing in some of the legal markets. We've been fined here in Massachusetts. We have to look at the solvents, residuals. Is there any residual solvents? And then the profiles on what's in the cannabinoids. Some of them will list those. Some of them will even give the terpenoid profiles.
Yeah.
So these are all the things that we're looking for in a COA is what I tell people to look for. Look at those things. And again, remember, when they do this batch, it could have been the top, the middle, or the bottom. They're just going in and grabbing. So if I come in and grab something and each one of us grab something, it could be a different sample. So understand that it's a guesstimation, but it is something that is considered as a certified analysis. So use that and understand what it means, though. And all states are not requiring this. So this is where you don't know what you're getting, but use your common sense. Also look at how it reacts with you is what I tell people. It's all about you. It's cannabinoid medicine. It's very personalized. So please understand that.
Yeah, and I do want to add one really important point that's going on in the industry that lots of internal discussion is that THC counts that people have through the marketing efforts of some not good players in the cannabis industry, that they are led to believe that THC in a product is really high at like a 31%, where people have this misunderstanding. A higher THC, you're going to get high, you're going to get as high as you can, which is wrong. The cannabis plant itself cannot grow THC or cannot produce THC to a level usually higher than 24%. So when you see a brand that it's marketing itself as we have a 31% THC, that's just wrong.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. I just love that dialogue we just had. So I want to ask a question that we got a lot of questions that came in from folks who registered for the forum today. And Katrina asks, does the infusion of cannabis alter the nutritional or caloric content of the food? Does it alter the time it takes to digest the food? So who wants to take that on?
I'll be happy to talk about that because this is a very key factor because like Chef can tell you, it depends on the ingredients that she decides to use that day, right? And she's going to manipulate that recipe based on who she's going to serve. If she's got somebody that doesn't like glutens or can't take certain things, she's going to avoid that. So there's caloric things as far as sweeteners that people are using, the ingredients is, and a lot of people, my patients, have other underlying diseases, i.e. diabetes,
Correct.
celiac disease, hypertension. So the salt contents, are you using iodized salt? Are you using sea salt? All of these things do make a difference in how it's going to be affecting or impacting that individual. And the metabolism, as I said, this is why I always say that you should have a doctor-guided treatment plan, because you have to look at your kidney functions, you have to look at your liver functions, you have to look at what's going on with the individual that you're treating. And this is why cannabis to me is still a drug. Food is a drug to me, and cannabis happens to be food and medicine, and that's what we're talking about. But it can be metabolized very differently. And like I tell people, if you've got fat metabolism problems, this fatty way of consuming the cannabis with the butter might not be the best way. If you're alcoholic, maybe avoiding the alcohol tincture might be the best way not to do it. And again, you got to look at the individual. What is it that their background is? What can they manage? And again, start somewhere. Start out and see how you do. You can always go up, you can go down. And this is why I use the word titrate, because dose is a very finite word, and this is not a finite plant. It can vary. So I just want to make sure people understand that as well.
Jackie, Chef Dom, did y'all want to add anything to that?
I think that mainly more so it can change the like, it's just like going off of what Dr. Uma said, if I'm cooking with canna butter per se, obviously that's going to, if the recipe calls for olive oil and I use butter, then that's going to change the calories on the recipe immediately. But if I use something in place of that, like olive oil or a coconut oil, it just really depends on what is used in a recipe per se. And just to kind of go off of what Dr. Uma said, it also kind of really depends on, there's a lot of things when you have to take into account, just like the same way with alcohol, like somebody that is taller or larger, somebody that is a woman or a man, it also is going to be metabolized different, just with all those things being taken into consideration as well. You have to look at the overall picture. If you just ate, a large dinner, and then you decide that you want to eat a small brownie bite at the end of dinner, and you think that, your body has to kind of metabolize all that food in your stomach before you can even feel the effects of, you may not even feel the effects depending on the kind of person that if you're 6'5", 250 pounds, you might not even feel that. So it's like Dr. Uma said, it's very individualized, and how one person may be affected is they affect somebody totally different. So you just have to, there's so many different ways, like she said, to titrate yourself. You can distill it under your tongue. You can do tincture drops under your tongue. You can do tea. So there's just so many different ways that you can titrate yourself in so many different ways, especially if you are a person that's on a diet. You can, get infused honey from certain places, and you can drink tea every day to medicate yourself. So you just have to open your mind. If you can consume it, then you can definitely medicate yourself with it.
Yeah.
And one thing, what we're talking about is the endocannabinoid system. And that is the system that we all have within our bodies that regulates. And your endocannabinoid system actually does change itself. So as Chef Dom was saying, is that, I'm sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. Is that everybody's ECS, as it's known, is different. And actually, it does not matter so much on the size of the person. And just to recognize that your ECS changes every day. And this is your body's way, that homeostasis of your body staying in balance. And that's where the cannabinoids are so helpful, is that they help your body stay in that homeostasis.
Thank you. So Chef Dom, you cook with concentrates. Can you
Correct.
tell our viewers and listeners what are concentrates?
Okay, so basically, concentrates are the products of distilling down the most desirable parts of the plants. You have extracts, and all extracts are concentrates, but all not concentrates are all extracts. So basically, I create canna butter, which could be considered as an extract per se, because I'm using, well, it's not a solvent per se, but I use all different types of things. But I definitely, I like to use distillate, in that's a concentrate. And basically I like to use that. I also will use live flower as well. But basically I try to make sure I use things that are tested
Mhm.
from the lab, because that basically at least gives me an estimation on what each, I say dose, but I like titrate. Dr. Uma has educated me on that. I like that titrate. It kind of can give you an estimation on what each item can be. And just going off of what she said earlier, we like to say like, okay, I started with this amount, I have 20 brownies. Each brownie is gonna have 25 milligrams in it, but each brownie is not going to be the same. It really is all an estimation. So no matter what you use, because there's so many different things that you can use. Some people use keef, some people use shatter, some people, um, it's just so many
So
different
what you're
avenues when
talking
it,
about, those are strains of cannabis that you were just
well,
referencing?
it's not strains. These are
Tell me
all
what it is.
concentrates. Like
Oh,
keef is
those
a
are the names of your
concentrate, shatter is a
concentrate.
concentrate,
Okay. Gotcha.
rosin is a concentrate. These are all
Gotcha.
different things. Like RSO oil is a concentrate. These are all things that can be
Mhm.
purchased from dispensaries.
Mm.
And you can actually use these items. You can add it to your food, or you can add it. There's certain things you can add to water, or you can just really take it directly. It just really depends on the person. I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of people that enjoy infused food and infused treats, they try to make a fun way to medicate themselves, or a tasty way, because there's some people that don't like the idea of smoking or don't like the taste of certain things. But again, that's why I was saying, like, there's tinctures, there's alcoholic tinctures, and then there's like tinctures that are made with glycerol as well. So you can buy different things like that. You can put a couple of drops in water or hot tea, like I said. So there's just so many different ways. Even if you're a person that's concerned with like, okay, well, I want to try some food, but I don't really know about my diet or my cholesterol, or I don't know how this is going to affect my body. There's different ways that you can put it inside of your diet to experiment and see what the effects could be helpful for you. So, I mean, you could put it in a smoothie. You know, you can make a salad dressing and put it
Oh,
on salad. So
wow.
there's just so, yeah, like you could keep the pulp. If you decide to create something with flour and you make like an oil, you can keep the pulp and you can add that with, you know, red wine vinegar, a little bit of infused olive oil, some other herbs, and you can make that a salad dressing. So it's just so many different ways that you can experiment with it. So that's why, again, we kind of just keep going back to the same. It's so personalized. So it, like, when people ask, what's the best thing to get? Should I get a cookie or a brownie? Well, it's really up to you. You know, are you the person? Do you like to chew gummies and candies? Is personal. And then also just going off of both what Dr. and Jackie and Dr. Uma have been talking about the whole time is also about like, if you have diabetes. If you have diabetes, obviously you don't want to get a bunch of candy. But outside of like health reasons, the best thing to get really is personalized. For me, I like brownies. I like chocolate. Chocolate definitely. To me, in my opinion, it just, the cannabis THC adheres better to chocolate than really anything else. So if I was going to eat edible, I'm going to eat something sweet.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of people that like a lot of other different things. There's people that like to eat food that's infused, but they don't want the food infused. They want the sauce infused on the side, so then they can
Wow.
control
Oh.
how they're being affected by what they're eating. So,
Mhm.
you know, there's just, when you think about it, the possibilities are endless, because you don't have to infuse the whole pot of food. You can have sauce on the side that's infused. And, you know, each teaspoon, I can say, okay, each teaspoon is estimation of, you know, 7 milligrams, but it's still an estimation if you decide to put this dressing or this sauce on your food. So
I'm
it's
so
just
glad
when
you
you,
said that, because the whole time you were talking, my stomach was grumbling, number one. And then second, I'm being sincere. And then second, all I could hear was Dr. Uma saying, go slow, go slow.
because
Do
it's
not
so
slather the
true. Like
entire salad with
it's so
this
true.
infused
Like
dressing.
I have had experiences where at an event that what we were at an event where we were educating the people and we were serving infused food, there was a gentleman who just like, he overindulged and he passed out. You know, like he passed out, and I don't think that he really, I don't he was having a good time. So one minute he was having a good time, and then there was also mimosas being served as well. So that's another thing to take into effect when, like Dr. Uma said, with the liver, with consuming alcohol, and with the cannabis, it's going to produce a different effect. So it's definitely low and slow, because everybody does not react the same to everybody does not react the same. So low and slow, it's like slow and steady wins the race every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be mindful is concentrates are the compounds that have been extracted going through this process and taking these cannabinoids and the terpenes from the plant. And as as Chef Dom alluded to, so these are using solvents for the extraction and pulling out the terpenes and the cannabinoids. Using butane, CO2, and ethanol are different chemicals that are used. But you have to be mindful that twofold is that concentrates are much stronger than if you were going to vape or smoke, use flour. And also one thing is that we've touched upon a little bit is that when edibles are processed in the liver, they actually go through this metabolism with one particular enzyme that makes THC even stronger, those psychotropic effects. So that gentleman that Chef Dom referred to is that there are these stories that people say like, oh, I had a cookie and I didn't feel the effects in a half hour, so I'm going to have another cookie. Well, 2 hours later, you're going to be really sorry that you had that second cookie. But because it's metabolized to this new, what's referred to as a metabolite, another version of that, of a cannabinoid.
Jackie, what are the side effects then if someone did consume too much?
Yeah. So you can have an increased heart rate. People can suffer from paranoia. What are some other nausea? The one thing about cannabis, it cannot kill you. It cannot an overdose of cannabis where it does not have an effect on that opioid receptor that's in your brainstem like an opioid does. So you're not going to have where opioids kill you is that it affects your respiratory system. That does not happen with cannabis. So the best thing to do is if you've had too much cannabis, is just chill out, literally chill out. If you have, keep some CBD. And my recommendation is always to have some CBD tincture on hand that will get into your system very quickly and help offset that too much THC in your system. Another way to remediate too much THC, where this is one of the challenges that we have, there's not a whole lot of research, but it's to get into a shower. And where the brain is distracted by the water hitting your skin, where there's all these receptors in the derma, your skin. And so your brain has literally switched gears from focusing on the effects of the THC and focusing on what's going on with your skin. So just stay calm and ride it out.
Dr. Uma, did you want to add to that? Because that was the shower.
First I want to back up a little bit. First of all, when we talk about cannabis with edibles, I want to talk about raw versus heated cannabis. We call it decarbing. So this is something that people want to understand. You can do just raw juicing. You can, if you're a grower, you could go get your juices and just do that. And people throw it in with other dishes. People are even just taking their leaves and cooking with it, their raw leaves, eating it. Then we talk about with the tea forms. I tell patients to do that. Just get a piece of dried bud. Go use your nose. Your nose knows. If nothing else fails you, if you can smell, and that's another conversation we'll talk about. People that can't smell might be early signs of Parkinson's. But if you can use your nose and smell what you like and use that, and that's called the terpenes that you're sniffing. And the terpenes all have its own health effects. So when we look at these edibles and what we're talking about with concentrates, anything, as the word says, concentrate means that you're concentrated, making it much more potent. So it's like taking a coffee bean and extracting it. That's what I think about. If you make coffee every day, you take your powder, you grind it, you make your coffee, depending on how much water you've added, that extract of your coffee is going to be different. So think about cannabis the same way. With coffee, you're using water. So the same way with concentrates, there's water, and water is not considered as a chemical extract. It's not a it's not a solvent. Water is not a solvent. It's an extraction process, but it's not a solvent. When we talk about solvents, we talk about alcohol, butane, CO2. These are all different things that are being used as solvent to extract the plant. Instead of putting your coffee through the water, now you're going to take the cannabis and put it through this, purge it, and push out the things at different temperatures, and you're going to get different things. And this is a whole chemistry project, going back to your the heating things. And that's another thing. You know, when you heat your cannabis at different temperatures, you're getting different cannabinoids being produced, from THCA CBDA,
Correct.
CBGA. Now at different temperatures, you're getting to CBD, THC, all of these, what we call is the process of decarboxylation. The acidic molecule, the A, is removed. And what it does is, what I like to use is the word intoxicating. It goes from a non-intoxicating to an intoxicating product, and that's what's happening chemically.
Yeah.
And it's we could talk about this for hours, but
I know this is so rich in content and information. I'm loving it.
and then you can use, like my patients, like Chef Dom said, if you're into smoking, get a good vaporizer, a flower vaporizer, and then you could, the vaped weed can be reused.
Yep.
One of my patients, he calls it Daddy's Nutella. And he takes the baked wheat and he mixes it with his chocolate Nutella that he makes. And he puts it on a cracker. And that's his little dose for his nighttime or during the day that he uses. And we mentioned the word hybrid. I just want to explain to people that's just what the word is. It says it's a mixture. It could be,
Right.
we have 3 particular strains we talk about when it talks about cannabis: sativas, indicas, and ruderalis. The 2 well-studied are sativas and indicas, but
Right.
a combination of them are called a hybrid. So that's all it is. Just understand hybrid is both of them coming together. And it can
Yeah.
be more sativa or more indica, and that's where looking at the labels are going to be. And the other thing I wanted to add is I have some babies that are on 3 grams of distillate a day for cancer treatment. If I took it, I'd be crawled in a hole for a week. And that's the worst thing. People will sleep it off. And I think of it as a U curve, a Dr. Uma curve. Too little is just as bad as too much.
Mhm.
And this is where your endocannabinoid deficiencies, we're learning about people's diseases that are very much related to deficiencies of your endocannabinoid system. IBS, migraines, fibromyalgia are all diseases, Dr. Ethan Russo, and we've known about it. You can treat alcoholism and addiction, and I'm going to say that boldly. You can treat these illnesses with cannabinoids and cannabis as a first line option. And that's what I'm telling people out there too. Cannabis must be a first line option and not the last resort for people.
Yeah. So we only have a few minutes left in this show, and I want to get to one question that we had sent in from someone who registered from the show. And I thought it was really interesting. So let me just go ahead and throw it out there. She said, how does consuming edibles affect a newborn if the mom is using it? Who wants to
Well,
put that one on?
I would not. Number one, there are very few studies on the impact of cannabis THC on infants. So Dr. Uma is treating infants, but she is a very well credentialed, done a lot of study.
Mhm.
And that's the first line of defense right there, is that I would be very, very mindful of consuming edibles without any guidance of a very well credentialed endocannabinoid or cannabis specialist.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about one of my colleagues and mentors, Dr. Melanie Dreyer. She did a study with the Rasta community and how in the Rasta community, this is part of their daily consumption. The babies are given teas. I've helped women actually get pregnant with the use of cannabinoid medicine. So as Jackie says, we have to have caution because remember, the breast milk is metabolized and what the mother consumes is going to be, and it's much more concentrated. So you have to always think this is, and remember that cannabis is fat soluble. So breast milk, and this is why fatty things we're combining it with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always a little bit leery because the drugs that they give for nausea and some of these other things that we're giving mothers, I'm a little concerned about them. We don't know the extent. But cannabis has been around a long, long, long time. And I'm originally from India, and cannabis is considered Ayurvedic medicine. So Ayu means life and Veda means knowledge. Do we still need to learn? Oh, yeah. We got lots of learning to do. We need to know more. We need to understand, concentrations, how much is really being delivered to the baby. And again, it could vary depending on what forms the mother consumes it.
Right.
So I always ask, what are you using it for? is the first question. What are you getting out of it? Is there something deeper? Because if the mother is having post-traumatic stress, and postpartum depression, and this is going to help her, hey, we might have to look at what are the weighing options. So definitely consult with a doctor. Please come and talk to people like me. Talk to your healthcare providers. And if they don't know, please send them my way. I'm happy to see them. There's people out there, nurses now that are trained that can help say, hey, let's look at this. Let's make sure what else is underlying the problem. But there are no clear-cut answers, but I don't want to rule it out. But at the same time, safety first, do no harm is what
So I'd like to close this show with giving you all the opportunity to just share some closing thoughts with our listeners and viewers about cannabis edibles and concentrates. So Jackie, I'm going to start with you. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, sure. One thing, just so mindful, and I have a Bob and Joan story that I share. Joan, and when Joan came to me, a neighbor of mine, well into her 80s, and Bob has since passed away, but his ultimate demise was Alzheimer's. And she was misinformed. Joan went into a dispensary and she said, "Oh, I was told that cannabis can help Bob's Alzheimer's," which is not true. We don't know that. It could treat if he was an Alzheimer's patient who presented with high anxiety, maybe so. But the danger of why you need to consult with cannabis specialists, cannabis scientists like myself, Dr. Umu, we spent a lot of time studying this, and where you're going into a dispensary where somebody is likely 21 years old, the bare minimum of a high school degree, they've taken some online education, and they're being misinformed. And particularly with seniors, and here we are in Florida, where we have a really high senior population, and seniors are often on other medications. We spoke about this processing of cannabis in the liver. Well, that's also where blood thinners are processed, and cannabinoids, the THC, can contraindicate or create issues for that blood thinner, that statin that a patient is on, and make it less effective. So make sure, that's my number one, is that you talk to a knowledgeable cannabis specialist before you go in and talk to a bud tender who's going to sell you whatever deal that they have that day.
Yeah. Chef Dom, closing thoughts.
I just encourage people to broaden their horizons and to break the stigma of what medical cannabis can do, because it is the future. And we didn't touch on it today, but there's so many things that you can just do with the whole plant, not even speaking about the medicinal properties of it. So I just encourage everybody to just like educate themselves. And if you are interested in getting a medical marijuana card, make the move and do it here in Florida. And there are all different types of events here in Florida, especially where I'm from in Jacksonville, Florida, where you can educate yourself on how to protect yourself in Florida, still within those regulated laws here.
Thank you. Dr. Uma, closing thoughts.
Yes, addiction and the use of cannabis is still a concern to me, especially among the young, because if you've got an addictive personality, this should not be the newest thing that you get addicted to. And people can build up a tolerance. We want people to understand that. And the easiest way is take a holiday break. Don't use anything for a day or a week, and you'll see that it resets. I call it emptying the cup out. Every cup is a little different for everybody. Your cup might be big one day, it might be small. Understand what your use of cannabinoids can vary day to day. 3 key words Dr. Uma always says besides titrate is hydrate. Make sure you have liquids because cannabis is a dehydrant. Make sure you have food on board because cannabis causes your blood sugar to drop, and that can make you more anxious just as much as it treats anxiety. It can cause anxiety. And journal. This is your journey. It's your personalized medicine. Share your knowledge, share your stories, try different things, but remember, safety first, do no harm, and everybody's different. And please ask your doctors and your healthcare providers, what do you know about the ECS? And teach them about it. And the 3 words are educate, embrace, and empower. We started with that. Whatever knowledge you learn, please share it. You are a consumer and you're a customer, so get educated. It's about you, the people you love, and healthcare providers, I love you, but remember, you too are patients and you need to learn about this. And I'm Dr. Uma Dhanabalan. You can find me at Uplifting Health and Wellness. I do expert witness work, and we have a concierge practice. and I do consults for people all over the world, and I love what I do. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Uma, Jackie, and Chef Dom. Thank you all for being guests on this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum, brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. Thank you to everyone that's watching this program. Tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comment boxes on YouTube and Facebook after this live program. If you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing on October 12th, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. We also want to encourage you to go to the Florida Department of Health Office of Medical Marijuana Use to learn how to obtain a legal medical marijuana card in the state of Florida. And we also encourage you to go to the Florida A&M University's Mary website to learn more about this initiative, its educational programs, and additional information about cannabis use in Florida. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.